If any one of us walked in to a Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Domino's, your local mom and pop pizza facility, name it, any pizza joint, and asked for a T-bone or porterhouse steak, mashed potatoes, a salad, the full trimmings, right? We asked for a full course meal. We'd look pretty silly, wouldn't we? We'd probably get some odd stares and probably be reminded that they don't sell that shit there. It's not their kind of food. Subsequently, if we tune into an episode of Beavis and Butthead expecting to be educationally informed, that'd be pretty goofy, right? Because you don't watch Beavis and Butthead to be informed of deep meanings in life. You tune in to laugh, be entertained. Amusement is what that show is all about. I get it. Beavis and Butthead ain't for everybody, but follow my train of thought here. So why is it that so many people are online and have been since Saturday night bitching, moaning, and carrying on about the Ronda Rousey-Gina Carano fight, namely saying they feel ripped off because it was too short? What exactly did you expect coming in? Did you know the product of what you were watching with a Rousey fight? How many of you actually seen one before? Because if you did, you would know to answer the question of somebody online, what exactly did we fucking pay for? Well, what you paid for was what you got, a typical Ronda Rousey fight. This is a woman who, coming into Saturday, had 17 fights to her name. 14 as a pro, 3 as an amateur. In those 17 fights, 14 of them were ended before the end of the first round. 14. And that included her loss to Amanda Nunes. 12 of those fights ended in under 1 minute. That includes the Nunes loss. Okay? So, of 17 fights prior to Saturday, 3 made it out of the first round. 3. But we got people going in there expecting to see what? Dan Henderson and Shogun Rua? Expecting to see Griffin Bonner, which was a 3-round slugfest? That's not Ronda Rousey. That was never Ronda Rousey. Okay? Wasn't Rousey in the peak of her career. What makes you think it was going to be any different now after she had been on the shelf for almost 10 years, right? Facing someone who hasn't fought in 17. Right? Last time Gina Carano stepped foot in that cage was 2009, over 6,000 days ago. Walking Dead had yet to air its very first episode. Not to go political on here, but we were just getting started with the first term of Barack Obama's administration. But we're pissed that a woman who hasn't fought since the graduating class of 2026 in high school was still in diapers, and Ronda Rousey, who never was somebody who acted like she was working by the hour, didn't go out there and give us a longer fight. Look at product placement, man. Know what you're purchasing before you purchase it. You're not going to purchase a baseball bat to go fishing with. You're not going to purchase a basketball, right, to do an oil change. But people were expecting something different from Ronda Rousey fighting someone who hasn't fought in almost 2 decades. And then you're pissed. I'm not going to sit there and say I was particularly excited about this fight. I was as outspoken about it as anybody at the very beginning. What the hell's the point? This is the direction they're going. These are things that came out of my mouth and off my fingers. Then I realized what this was. Did I watch? Nope. I didn't, because I knew that this was not going to be a fight that lasted long, and it featured 2 women who are long since removed from the sport. Look, it's been a hell of a long time since Rousey was in there. The game has changed a lot. I don't need to begin to tell you how different it is since Carano fought Cyborg. But what this was, plain and simple, is a chance to see two women who had as big of an impact in the mainstream mind in growing women's MMA as anyone ever has. Am I saying they're the best fighters? Not even close, okay? Amanda Nunes would like a word with anybody that says Rousey's the GOAT or Carano's the GOAT, okay? Chris Cyborg would like a word. I could name probably 3 or 4 women's fighters who were better than Rousey. Prime Johanna. That's not the point of this, though. None of them, with due respect, had the cultural impact in growing this sport more so than Rousey and Carano. You could argue Rousey is one of the 5 most influential fighters in MMA history. Bottom line, there was once upon a time that Dana White said, we will never have women in the UFC, ever. Then Rousey came along and did what Rousey does. Went in there, talked shit, and wrecked shop. And that's what made her such a popular name. She was the women's MMA equivalency of Mike Tyson in his heyday. Got out there, and you knew it was going to be a fucking train wreck for the opponent. Much like Tyson and Buster Douglas, Holly Holm wound up being what crashed and burned the Rousey train. But not before she put women's MMA on her back, like her or not. And believe me, there's a lot of people who don't. I get it. I understand. Rousey's not exactly the most endearing personality, and she's not the easiest to deal with. From firsthand knowledge, okay? I was at her victory over Alexis Davis at UFC 175, and I saw how she treated staff. Not an easy person to deal with. So I get if you don't like Rousey, but you can't deny what she did for this sport, especially if you're a female. How many women's fighters are now doing this for a living because of Ronda Rousey? How many of them got into it because of Gina back in the day? Was Gina the best fighter? No. Gina Carano is smoking fucking hot, who actually went out there and showed some competency. It's what made people like Gina. But they grew this sport. And this was a chance to say farewell and let them have one more moment in the spotlight before they ride off into the sunset. Now, there's talk that Gina may do this again. She may have one more in her. She wants to fight a striker. Fine. But this is the end of the line, and this was the last chance we had of seeing a fight that once upon a time could be considered a dream fight, right? Was it going to be something special? No, that'd be like the Major League All-Star game having an exhibition pitching versus hitter matchup between Nolan Ryan and Albert Pujols. Something we haven't seen before versus, the best pitcher of his era, one of the best pitchers of his era versus one of the best hitters of the era, right? That's all it would be. Would be like a one-on-one game at the NBA All-Star game between, trying to think fairly here, trying to think of an appropriate comparison in distance of time they've been away. Be like LeBron James playing Magic Johnson or Larry Bird in one-on-one. How's that? That's what this would be. But LeBron's still active, so that's not. But you catch my train of thought here. So, again, if you tuned in, watching, expecting this to be a competitive, long fight, that's on you, man. But before I spend money, if you actually spent to pay for Netflix to watch this, then please, for your own sake, next time, especially with this sport, understand what you're getting into. I've seen people talk about from wrestling, this is why I like wrestling more. Fine, fair, understandable. You can script these matches to go longer in pro wrestling. They're intended to generally go longer, okay? There's no script in MMA. Once that, referee says, let's fight, and 1 second ticks off that clock, it's anybody's ball game. I've seen 5-round fights that want 45 minutes of nonstop action. I saw 45 minutes of stalling, laying prey, and punching people in the kidneys. I've seen 3-round fights where strikers stood and stared at one another, and one of them featured Francis Ngannou, okay, who is a nightmare to fight any given night. Watch his fight with Derek Lewis. I've seen more action with people going to the fucking bathroom then you'll have situations where fights will end in under 10 seconds. My dear friend Ryan Jimmo, God rest his soul, made his UFC debut by knocking Anthony Perosh out in 7. You never know what you're going to expect with MMA. So if you're going to watch this sport, please understand the people who are fighting and what you're purchasing. And it'll make it a lot easier that way before you proceed. Thanks for tuning in.